If you finally started feeling better after your breakup, you were doing great, moving on with your life, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, you miss your ex more than ever. Pay very close attention, because what's happening in your brain right now isn't confusion, it's withdrawal, and understanding this changes everything. Before we go deeper, according to neuroscience, your brain doesn't miss your ex more when you're healing. Your brain is experiencing dopamine withdrawal. When you were in pain right after the breakup, your stress hormones were so high that they actually numbed you. Cortisol, adrenaline, your whole system in crisis mode. You were surviving, not feeling. But now that you're calming down, your dopamine levels are dropping, and that drop feels worse than the initial pain. This is called the extinction burst. It's the same mechanism that happens with any addiction. Right before you break free, the craving hits hardest. Psychologically, you're not missing the person. You're missing the emotional intensity. Your nervous system got addicted to the chaos. The highs, the lows, the drama, the uncertainty. When things finally stabilize, your brain interprets calm as boring. It craves the familiar pain, because at least that felt like something. From a behavioral standpoint, this is why people go back to toxic relationships right when they're about to be free. The brain mistakes intensity for love. It confuses addiction for connection. And right when you're healing, the withdrawal symptoms convince you that missing them means you made a mistake. Here's what most people don't understand. The pain you feel when you're healing isn't evidence that you should go back. It's evidence that you're detoxing. Every addiction gets worse before it gets better. Your ex isn't suddenly more appealing. Your brain is just panicking because it's losing its drug. Neurologically, relationships create neural pathways. Every time you thought about your ex, texted them, saw them, your brain reinforced those pathways. Now that you're not feeding those pathways, they're firing randomly, trying to survive. That's the intrusive thoughts. That's the sudden waves of missing them. It's not intuition, it's your brain having a tantrum. There's also something called euphoric recall. When you start healing, your brain only remembers the good parts. It edits out the fights, the disrespect, the reasons you left. It creates a highlight reel and plays it on loop. This isn't memory, this is manipulation. Your brain is trying to get you back into the cycle. From a psychological perspective, this moment right here is the most dangerous point in your healing, because the pain feels so real that you think it must mean something. You think if you still miss them this badly, maybe you weren't supposed to leave, but that's exactly backwards. The intensity of the withdrawal tells you how toxic the relationship was. Behaviorally, people who are in healthy relationships don't experience this. They feel sad, they grieve, but they don't get hit with random waves of desperate longing months later. That only happens when the relationship was activating your trauma, keeping you in fight or flight, feeding you just enough to keep you hooked. Here's the part nobody talks about. You're not addicted to your ex. You're addicted to the version of yourself that existed in that relationship. The one who was always chasing, always trying to fix things, always hoping. That identity gave you purpose, even if it destroyed you. And now without it, you feel empty. This is called identity withdrawal. You don't know who you are without the drama. You don't know what to do with your energy now that you're not analyzing texts or waiting for calls or wondering if they still care. The absence of chaos feels like absence of meaning. From a neuroscience standpoint, your brain also associates your ex with survival. If the relationship was unstable, your amygdala learned to see them as a threat you had to manage. Now that they're gone, your brain is confused. It's like you escaped danger, but your nervous system is still scanning for it. Missing them is just your brain trying to locate the threat it was trained to monitor. There's also the sunk cost fallacy. The more pain you invested, the harder it is to walk away. Your brain wants that suffering to mean something. It wants a return on investment. So it convinces you that going back will somehow make all that pain worth it. But pain doesn't become worth it by creating more pain. Psychologically, this is also about control. When you were heartbroken, you had no control. You were a victim of the breakup. But now that you're healing, you have agency again. And weirdly, that's scarier. Because now if you're unhappy, it's on you. If you're lonely, you can't blame them anymore. So your brain creates this fantasy where going back gives you back the comfort of helplessness. Here's what happens when you understand this. You stop trusting the feeling. You recognize it for what it is. Not love, not fate, not a sign. Just brain chemistry having a final meltdown before it reorganizes around your new reality. From a recovery standpoint, this phase usually lasts 2 to 3 weeks. If you can sit through it without reaching out, without checking their social media, without breaking no contact, you come out the other side completely different. But if you cave, you reset the entire process. You're back at day 1. Worse, actually, because now you've taught your brain that withdrawal works, that if it creates enough pain, you'll go back. Behaviorally, the people who make it through this phase do specific things. They don't fight the feeling. They don't try to logic their way out of it. They just observe it. They say, okay, this is withdrawal, this will pass, I don't have to act on it. They treat the craving like weather. It comes, it peaks, it fades. There's also a physiological component. When you're in withdrawal, your cortisol spikes again. You feel anxious, restless, like something is wrong. Your body is literally in stress mode. So you need to regulate your nervous system. Movement, cold showers, breathing exercises, anything that tells your body you're safe, even though your mind is screaming. From an attachment theory perspective, this is especially brutal for anxious attachment styles. Your nervous system is wired to interpret distance as danger. So when you're finally creating healthy distance, every cell in your body is telling you to close the gap. But closing the gap is what kept you sick. The healing is in staying away, even when it hurts. Here's the truth most people need to hear. Missing someone badly doesn't mean they were good for you. It means they were familiar, and your nervous system will always choose familiar over healthy until you retrain it. That retraining is painful. It feels like loss, but it's actually growth. If you're going through this right now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me how long it's been since your breakup and whether you're experiencing this surge of missing them just when you thought you were fine. Let's build a community of people who understand that healing isn't linear and that these feelings don't mean you're doing it wrong. Psychologically, you also have to grieve the fantasy, not the person, but the potential, the future you imagined, the version of them you kept hoping they'd become. That fantasy was never real, but your brain invested in it like it was, and now you have to let it die. That's a specific kind of grief that hits hardest when you're almost free. From a cognitive behavioral perspective, your thoughts during this phase are completely unreliable. You'll think things like, nobody will ever understand me like they did, or I'll never feel that intensity again, or maybe I was too harsh. None of that is true. Those are addict thoughts. Your brain is negotiating for one more hit. Here's what changes everything. When you miss your ex during healing, ask yourself what specifically you miss, not them as a whole person. What exact thing? And then ask if that thing actually existed, or if it was something you were chasing. Most of the time, you're missing the person you needed them to be, not the person they were. There's also a biological component. Breakups cause actual physical pain. Your brain processes social rejection in the same areas as physical injury. So when you're healing, you're not just emotionally recovering, you're physically healing from trauma. And just like a broken bone aches before it fully mends, your heart aches harder right before it closes. From a relationship psychology standpoint, the people who go back during this phase almost always regret it, because they go back to ease the withdrawal, not because anything changed. And the relationship that caused the pain can't be the cure for the pain. You just end up in the same cycle, but now you've lost your progress. Behaviorally, distraction doesn't work during this phase. You can't outrun withdrawal. You have to sit in it. You have to feel the discomfort without reacting. That's the only way to teach your nervous system that you can survive without them. Every hour you don't reach out is reprogramming your brain. Here's the part that gives people hope. This intense missing phase is actually proof you're healing correctly. If you weren't making real progress, you wouldn't be experiencing withdrawal. The fact that your brain is fighting this hard means you're doing something it perceives as a threat to the old pattern, and that's exactly what needs to happen. From a neuroscience perspective, you're building new neural pathways right now, pathways that don't include them, pathways where you are enough on your own, where calm doesn't equal boring, where stability doesn't equal settling. But those pathways are fragile. One text, one call, one moment of weakness, and you're back on the old highway. Psychologically, this is also where self-compassion matters most. You're not weak for missing them. You're not stupid for wanting to reach out. You're human. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, which is seek comfort in familiar patterns. But you're choosing differently. And that choice, repeated over and over during withdrawal, is what creates lasting change. If this video is describing exactly what you're feeling right now, do two things. First, share this with someone who needs to understand they're not crazy for missing their ex more now than they did right after the breakup. Second, make sure you're subscribed, because we're going deep into the psychology of relationships and healing in every video. The truth is, you're not confused. You're not making a mistake by staying away. You're just in the hardest part of the process, the part right before breakthrough. The part where your brain makes one last desperate attempt to pull you back into what's familiar. But if you can sit through this, if you can let the wave crash without running back, you come out the other side as someone completely different. Someone who doesn't need chaos to feel alive. Someone who doesn't mistake intensity for love. Someone who finally knows the difference between missing a person and missing an addiction. And when you get there, you'll look back at this moment and realize that the pain you felt wasn't a sign to go back. It was the final test before freedom. Now, if you want to understand the deeper psychology behind why some people become more emotionally unavailable the more you try to get close to them, check out the video on your screen right now.
It's going to explain everything. I'll see you there.